Hello, my name's Adrian Goldberg and welcome to the Byline podcast from the Byline Times. It's what the papers don't say, what radio doesn't report and what telly doesn't tell you. This time, Natalie Elphicke, Labour and the press. Elphicke is the one-time Tory MP who crossed the floor of the House of Commons recently to join the backbenchers on Keir Starmer's side, prompting more than a few raised eyebrows amongst her new colleagues. The Dover MP was seen as being on the right of the Conservative Party. She has backed stronger rules on migration, opposed a climate change test for new oil and gas licences. So what message does it send that she has now been embraced by a party that still clings to the notion that it is somehow left-wing? There's another curious aspect to the story too. The Sunday Times has alleged that in July 2020, Elphicke tried to persuade former Justice Secretary Robert Buckland to change the judge who was due to try her husband, Charlie Elphicke, for sexual assault. Charlie was the previous MP for Dover. Buckland is said to have immediately rejected the idea, and Natalie Elphicke denies the claim. But isn't it, shall we say, convenient for the Conservatives that this story didn't appear for 4 years, but then popped out into the open, blinking in the harsh glare of publicity the moment she switched to Labour? To discuss this, I've got the Byline Times political editor with me, Adam Bienkov, and Mick Wright, who contributes regularly to the Byline Times and also has a fantastic Substack at Broken Bottle Boy. Welcome both. Firstly, Adam, the very idea of Natalie Elphicke being a Labour MP has many people scratching their heads. I had an email this morning from the Fire Brigades Union, one of many groups on the left who are absolutely aghast that she could have been welcomed into the Labour Party.
Yeah, I mean, I think of course, on a sort of superficial level, you can see where Keir Starmer and the Labour Party were coming from this. You know, if any Conservative MP, let alone one who has been so vocal on the Conservative Party's number one campaigning issue on immigration, comes out and says that their government's policy isn't working and that the Labour's party's policy would work much better. And obviously that's always going to be very tempting for Keir Starmer. But unlike the defection of Dan Porter the week before, who's somebody who's seen as on the centre of the Conservative Party, so one nation wing of the party, Natalie Elphicke is very much to the right of the party, even to the right of some of the most well-known, prominent right-wing Conservative MPs, people like Priti Patel. She's even seen as to the right of her on some of these issues. And she is somebody in the past who has suggested that immigrants trying to cross the Channel should be forcibly turned around on their boats. And according to one Conservative MP, Michael Fabricant, she even suggested that they should be shot at, even if it risked a war with France. So this is someone who has incredibly trenchant views about immigration, about trade unions, about a whole series of issues which are completely at odds with Labour MPs. And it has caused a huge amount of anger among Labour MPs. I was speaking to some last week who's saying that the anger about this issue has spread right across the party, not just from left-wing critics of Keir Starmer, but people on the centre and the right of the party, and on the backbenches, all the way up to members of the shadow cabinet. And I do think, particularly on this issue of what she may or may not have done to try and pressure the Justice Secretary and judges, of course, she was suspended from Parliament over attempts to pressure the judiciary in relation to her husband. That issue in particular has been particularly damaging among Labour MPs, particularly female Labour MPs, who believe that this puts her beyond the pale. And I do wonder whether the Labour Party leadership were blinded by the sort of short-term political gain of taking on somebody like Elphicke without considering what the sort of medium-term to long-term prospects could be. Because this is somebody who is well known as being a loose cannon. There are all these kinds of allegations now coming out about her. Obviously, yes, it's completely hypocritical for the Conservative Party to sit on these issues for so long and only suddenly discover that they've got a problem with them as soon as she joins the Labour Party. But these are not issues that have been completely unknown to the Labour Party. There's audio revelations about her in the past. These are things that you would have considered the Labour Party to have thought about before they decided to accept her.
Yeah, I mean, in Keir Starmer's favour, perhaps, is the fact that she isn't going to be standing at the next election. So she doesn't have to stand on a platform that would appear to be completely contrary to her own strongly held views. You mentioned the attitude that she had towards survivors of sexual abuse after her husband's case came to light. He had the whip removed from him at the time by the Conservative Party. She said that was a threat to British values. She said Charlie is charming, wealthy, charismatic and successful, attractive and attracted to women, all things that in today's climate make him an easy target for dirty politics and false allegations. Of course, he was found guilty. Marcus Rashford, the Manchester United and England footballer, should perfect his game rather than play politics. So she's engaged in these culture war issues as well. Just a remarkably bad fit, you would have thought, for a party seeking to present itself as a moderate centre-left or even just centre party.
Yeah, and as you say, it's true that she does not plan to stand at the general election, which in itself has raised some questions about exactly why she has defected. And when Downing Street first heard about her defection, that heard that she was stepping down from the party, they initially thought that it must be that she's moving to Reform rather than the Labour Party, because that's clearly where her politics sort of most clearly align. So there are these questions about exactly why this has happened. The immediate suspicion was that she may have been offered some kind of peerage. That's been denied both by her and by the Labour leadership. But they did say last week that she could potentially be given a job on the issue of housing, which is something that she has been campaigning on. But from Labour's perspective, Dover is a seat that they are targeting. They believe they could win if things go their way in the general election. Why do they need somebody like her in her position who's looking down the barrel of the electoral gun to actually come over to the party? They have a candidate already in the seat. She's very unpopular in the area. Her neighbouring constituency, Labour Party in Folkestone, have put out a statement saying that they believe her membership should be denied and that this is a betrayal of their Labour values. So it does seem, whatever kind of short-term political gain this move may have got the party, it does seem to have been at least balanced out by all of the negative aspects of it, which have been playing out, as I'm sure Mick will go on to discuss in the papers over the recent days.
Yeah, and Mick, we've got you here as a media commentator, but I can't not let you have a thought about this. You can understand, I suppose, the headline value to Keir Starmer of having another Tory MP defect to Labour. I think we'd all get that, wouldn't we? But to accept such a Conservative defector, maybe he just thinks that the headline is the thing that will grab people's eyes and ears, and all of the rest below it will be just noise for Labour supporters. But if that was his calculation, I'm suggesting perhaps that it wasn't a particularly wise one.
Yeah, there's always the argument that ordinary people don't pay attention to this stuff. And like you say, the headline will be what is remembered above anything. But of course, as Adam said, she has not so much got skeletons in her closet as she's operating an ossuary. You know, there are so many problems with her that it is kind of baffling that Labour High Command would think the short-term gain is worth the long-term pain. And I think there is long-term pain with it, because this is a person who has had so many things in her past that can keep getting picked up and dragged out that it just doesn't seem worth it at all. I suppose there is the aspect there. It has been said in the past that Starmer's office and Starmer's advisors quite like needling the left of their own party. And if that's the case, this is, one way to do it, but it doesn't seem to be a particularly wise strategic move from my perspective either.
And we should say that her comments about her ex-husband's victims, she has apologised for, but only since going over to Labour. She hadn't apologised for them before. And she was suspended from the House of Commons. This is history for attempts to interfere at some level with her ex-husband's court case. So what's new in this is the allegation, which I stress that she denies, about an attempt to get Robert Buckland, who was then the Justice Secretary, involved. And it seems to me the real story of this, if that is true, why didn't Robert Buckland report that to the police at the time? I mean, that's a very serious allegation.
Yeah, I mean, and the answer's obvious, isn't it? It's not going to get a backbencher from his own party in the mire then, and now a backbencher for the Labour Party. She's fair game. From what I'm told, there was some awareness of this bouncing around Westminster before this. I'm not sure if Adam can speak more to that, but there was some sense that this story had been doing the rounds some time before, but perhaps people couldn't stand it up. And now with Buckland saying what he's saying, well, there's now some juice to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not just Elphicke. I mean, after Dan Porter's defection the week before, there were some briefings from Conservative sources trying to dish some dirt on him, none of which seems to have made its way into the papers. So it does make you wonder how much information Conservative Party whips have got on the 340 other Conservative MPs who are still within the party, and why none of this was considered in the public interest for them to share before now. So yes, it's obviously hypocritical. It's also, I think, hypocritical of some of the newspapers who have done the running with these stories and briefings over the past week, who, with the honourable exception of somebody like Gabriel Pogond at the Times, who's been covering this story for some times, this story has not really got a huge amount of attention in a lot of the papers while she was a Conservative MP, but now she's a Labour MP. Suddenly it's splashing the front pages of the Mail and some of the other papers who previously ignored it.
No, and that's the point really, isn't it here, Mick, is that if you are a Labour MP, and we've seen this with Angela Rayner recently and the allegations against her, if you are a Labour MP, then there are a number of national newspapers, the Times being one of them, but more obviously the Daily Telegraph, the Mail, the Sun, who will feel that you're fair game. Any pretense that we have a balanced press in this country is demonstrated to be obviously untrue when you compare how those newspapers would have treated the story if Natalie Elphicke had still been a Conservative MP at the time. I'm not saying they wouldn't have reported it anywhere. It would not have been headline news, and it would not then have made the news of radio stations and television stations in the way that it did subsequently.
Yeah, it's about the extent and the intensity of the coverage. I mean, the Angela Rayner story is still firing on all cylinders for the Daily Mail. I do think we'll probably see a shift, though, coming relatively soon, as not perhaps from the Mail and the Telegraph, but perhaps from the Murdoch titles, because I think they will make a shift more wholeheartedly towards supporting Labour ahead of the election in a similar way to the way they moved in 1997. I think that Murdoch will want to back a winner, and I think you may see more focus on Conservative scandal in the final months before the election, and a slight shift in which MPs get that focus. I think that will be around, trying to rearrange the deck chairs ahead of a Starmer administration.
I think that's right. And, we're already kind of seeing pigeon steps towards that from the Murdoch papers, slowly edging towards a position where they were likely, I think, to endorse the Labour Party in the next general election, which previously the Labour leadership didn't think was likely to happen. And already you can see that for the first time during the recent London mayoral elections with a different paper, the Evening Standard, which had never previously backed the Labour candidate in the mayoral election, but they did reluctantly back Sadiq Khan at the last minute during this contest. I think we'll see that reflected on a national level, most likely, I suspect, from the Times and possibly even the Sun as well.
Adam Bienkov, thank you. Byline Times political editor. Mick Wright as well. Just point us towards your Substack again, Mick.
brokenbottleboy.substack.com.
Not to be missed. Likewise, Adam Bienkov's folded as well as his fine work for the Byline Times and the Byline supplement. If you want to support this podcast, by all means do so. We'd love you to do so. Then take out a subscription to the Byline Times. It's our brilliant monthly newspaper that drops onto your letterbox with a satisfying thump. And it contains articles you can't read anywhere else, as well as the best of our online content. So find out how to subscribe over at bylinetimes.com. That's at bylinetimes.com. I'm Adrian Goldberg. This has been a We Bring audio production for the Byline Times. We'll see you again very soon. But for now, thank you. Goodbye.